There are some tribes out there that live in the old ways and practice certain traditions and beliefs that some may find unique. Or they could find them terrifying and thus not want to mess with them. Allow me to show you the 20 toughest tribes that are feared by the US Army. Number 20. The Mercy Tribe. I'm going to warn you ahead of time that this first one is just a little bit disturbing to look at due to some augmentations that they've done over time. In this case, I'm talking about the Mercy Tribe, who are definitely an intimidating folk due to their unique accessories. They live within the Omo Valley, an isolated region in Ethiopia, and are one of the last tribes that still wear traditional clothing and accessories. But the accessory that they're most known for is why many people are a bit afraid of them, because in this culture, the men and women are willing to basically mutilate themselves in order to put a wooden lip plate literally within their body. And before you ask, no, piercings are not exactly my thing. A girl's lower lip is cut, most of the time by her mother when she reaches the age of 15 or 16, and it's held open by a sodden plug until it heals. It's up to the girls how far they want the lip to be stretched. The very painful process can often take over several months. Now, if you think about that, it takes months to make this process, and when they're done, well, they're not going to look like anyone else outside of their tribe, for better and for worse. Believe it or not, there are a lot of beliefs about that lip plate, including how it's a symbol of beauty for the younger women, or how if they marry and then the husband dies, they get rid of their lip plate because their beauty will soon fade with the husband being gone. You might also recall seeing someone with a lip plate in the Council of Black Panther in the Marvel movie. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Now it's time for the sweet topic. People of these tribes violate all the laws of physics, and in different ways. On the left, we have a tribe who does crazy things with their feet, and on the right, one who does crazy things with their lips. The image on the left showcases an extreme case of foot binding common amongst certain Chinese tribes, something that most people would consider a serious violation of physics. And on the right, you can see a member of the Mercy tribe who takes part in a particularly extreme lip piercing ritual. Would you do either of these things to your body? Let me know all about it in the comment section down below using the hashtag #SweetTopic. Number 19. North Sentinelese. There are many reasons why someone might not want to mess with another person, or in this case, another tribe. In the example of the North Sentinelese, they're not to be messed with for one very simple reason. If you approach their island, they're going to shoot at you with their primitive weapons, and if you get too close, you're going to be murdered. The good news is that the North Sentinelese live on an island that is owned by India, and so you'd have to have some really bad luck in order to run into them, but that doesn't mean they're not dangerous outright, because there are multiple people and groups who have tried to reach out to this tribe, all in an attempt to gain communication and learn more about them. But every single time that happens, those people are then attacked. In November of 2018, one American man was killed by members of the tribe, but there's even more of a twist here. They're not trying to keep people away because they're in aggressive nature. They're just very aware of what outsiders can bring in. They know that it was the British that wiped out some nearby tribes on their home islands, and furthermore, due to their exposure to nothing else but the island and their own people, they don't have the proper immunity to deal with things like diseases that could literally eradicate their entire population. So between the attacks and the logic of it all, people leave this tribe alone, making them the most isolated tribe in the world. Number 18. Goroka Tribe. Now we'll head to Papua New Guinea to learn about the Goroka tribe, much like another tribe that we just talked about. The Goroka people existed in isolation from the outside world through no fault of their own. The persistence of tribal wars and harsh natural conditions is the cause of their separation. Their way of life differs little from the way of life of ordinary people, and they also have a large set of traditions and beliefs that govern them. So if you were to actually visit, you might be in for a surprise in terms of what they do and exactly why they do it. They like to have large families, and it's well noted that within those groups, the most senior or oldest member is the head of the family. Furthermore, every single person in the family has responsibilities that they have to take care of. They're all stronger together because they well and truly work as a group. Annually in September, a well-known tribal gathering and cultural event in Papua New Guinea, which attracts a huge number of tourists, is held here. It is the Goroka Show, where numerous tribes arrive to show their music, dance, and their culture. It's not a short show, it's actually a 3-day event, a festival if you will, and that just goes to show just how dedicated they are to their culture and showing it off when they want to. As you can see in some of these pictures and videos, they have elaborate face paintings and headdresses that they wear for such occasions. Number 17. Pawnee Tribe. Now we'll bring things to the United States, where there are actually plenty of tribes of people who have lived on this land, one of which was the Pawnee tribe, whose history expands hundreds of years, despite all that's occurred in the United States during that time. Early on in the 18th century, more than 60,000 members of the Pawnee tribe inhabited the area along the North Platte River in Nebraska, and while they're labeled a friendly tribe according to the U.S. government, which is an ironic thing to hear them say in any context, they're known for being very courageous people and fighting with all that they have. They've been known to fight for each other, for their land, and even more. One such great feat was that of Crooked Hand of the Skeety Band, who arose from bed to muster the old men, women, and boys and led the charge to defend their home. Though outnumbered 2-1, they outfought a superior armed enemy and then drove them away. This is the kind of battle story that you would usually read in a history class, but this is much cooler because it shows the strength of these people. They have a pride about them that will not go away no matter what people do to them or how the government takes away their lands and freedom. Never forget, Native Americans were here first. So if you're in the United States and you see one of the Pawnee, show them some respect. You may just live longer. Number 16. Arapaho tribes. Sticking with the Native American culture for a bit, we'll talk about the Arapaho tribe. They lived on the plains of Colorado and Wyoming and were close allies of the Cheyenne tribe and loosely aligned with the Lakota and Dakota. There are actually two different tribes because around 1878 they would take a split. Some went to the north and others went to the south, where they're both still around today. A large part of the Arapaho society was based around the warrior. Most young men sought this role after adopting use of the horse. The Arapaho quickly became master horsemen and highly skilled at fighting on horseback. Warriors had larger roles than combat in the society, and they were expected to keep peace amongst the camps, providing food and wealth for their families, and guarding the camps from attack, which, given the time period, they needed those warriors more than anything due to all the threats they could potentially face. As noted, the tribe has been split many times over the years, but that also adds to the wonder because they have different ways of doing things for the military and other matters. Warriors often painted their faces and bodies with war paint, as well as their horses, for spiritual empowerment. Think about the timing and patience that it would take to get that fully completed, and then go fight in a battle. Well, sometimes tribes and people do surprise you in the weirdest of ways. Number 15. Huaorani tribe. Did you know that there are tribes of people who reside within the Amazon rainforest? Well, there are, and there are also those that roam around it. One of them being the Huaorani tribe. They are comprised of almost 4,000 inhabitants that speak the language within their tribe, a linguistic isolate that is not known to be related to any other language, further setting them apart from the pack. They live in a key part of Ecuador, and they love living there, so much so that they've tried to fight off those who have invaded their lands. But in modern society, that's becoming more and more difficult to do, especially because of how advanced that technology has become. Another byproduct of the encroachment of mankind is that they've had to change their living styles. In this case, they live in permanent forest settlements, whereas before they would actually go out and hunt and gather food and supplies. But now that's just not as possible. This is no doubt part of the reason why the tribe has refused contact with the outside world alongside other tribes within the area. Some out there may think that it's foolish for tribes like this to ignore attempts at integration, but the fact of the matter is, they've been living with traditions for decades, if not centuries, so for them to give all of that up, especially when the neighbors are literally banging on their doorstep, well, that would be a very hard pill to swallow indeed. Number 14. Maori. Now we're going to talk about a tribe that no one wants to mess with because of their warrior heritage and pride. Meet the tribe known as the Maori. They're a warrior culture through and through, so much so that in the past they were split into smaller tribes, ones that would fight to their heart's content and thus get glory and power. But what kind of power? Well, the Maori believed in mana, or life energy, and they also believed that the man of a fallen foe was up for the taking. So they would eat their enemies and gather their power and mana for themselves. It's absolutely disgusting, but it did help to build up their reputation as being one of the deadliest warrior tribes in history, especially since they had plenty of weapons that could seriously hurt you. In fact, from when they're a certain young age, the men are taught how to master a variety of weapons and fighting styles. Not to mention, they get to do the legendary haka dance, which is said to both intimidate their foes while also granting them certain blessings. Just to be clear though, while the Maori were strong, they were also smart. They would make defensive positions for the people to fight in or run to in time of need, and they still roam the world today. Their impact on culture is not to be denied. If you don't believe me, just ask Jason Momoa. You know, the guy who played Aquaman, because he's Polynesian and he's done Maori haka dances before. Number 13. The Sioux. The Sioux are a confederacy of several tribes that speak three different dialects: the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. The Sioux are a proud people with a rich heritage. They were the masters of the North American plains and prairies, feared by other tribes from the Great Lakes to the Rockies. Considering how long of a distance that is, that should show you just how good and powerful that this tribe was at their peak. Before the middle of the 17th century, the Santee Sioux lived in the area around Lake Superior, where they gathered wild rice and other foods, hunted deer and buffalo, and speared fish from canoes. However, they were beset by war like many of the time, and thus they had to move to what we now know as Minnesota, and even pushed other tribes down to the Dakotas just so they could make it clear that they owned that part of the world. Both the men and women had things that needed to be done for the tribe. The men were the warriors, and when they did great things in battle, they were honored. The women had a more homely presence, but they had a variety of skills that you can still witness even to this day if you see them. The Sioux are still out there, but they've had to adapt to change and survival once again in order to live. On one hand, it's pretty cool that they're able to drop everything and start, but on the other, they wanted to live in their homelands on the plains, and humanity very much messed all of that up for them. Number 12. Shawnee people. Now, another Native American tribe. It's almost like we're trying to send a message here, unintentionally of course. They used to live in the Ohio River Valley, and things for a time were actually pretty good. During the summer, the Shawnee lived in bark-covered houses. Their large villages were located near the fields in which the women cultivated corn, or maize, and other vegetables. Not surprisingly though, the men of the Shawnee people were made to be the warriors, and they would be rewarded for their bravery in battle. Though, as some would note, that's not exactly how things are going to work. In the 17th century, the Shawnee were driven from their home by the Iroquois, scattering into widely separated areas. Some settled in what is now Illinois, and others in the Cumberland Valley, while one group moved to the southeast. Then, as noted before many times, when people started moving in and they began to use their advanced weaponry against the people, that's when they broke apart. Specifically, they broke into three independent branches: the Absentee, the Eastern, and the Cherokee Shawnee, which would eventually settle in different parts of Oklahoma. Now, some would tell you that the tribe is doing fine because there are over 12,000 of them, but apparently that's not how it's supposed to work. Yes, fear is something that everyone deals with on a regular basis, and fearing extinction is a much bigger thing, but it doesn't tell you all of what you should do in order to figure it out before the potential end. Number 11. Karubo tribe. Next up, we have the Karubo tribe, who are known for a few things, not the least of which are their mighty war clubs. They were even given the terrible nickname of the Clubber Indians. Most of the population, which is more than 200 people, still live in isolation even to this day. It wasn't until 1996, though, that things began to change, and the tribe was allowing people to get a good view of their lives. Furthermore, the tribe took certain things to heart, and actually, nobody's seen them in years. Their relationship with the outside world is a tentative thing at best. They've been known to lash out at certain intruders on their land, and other times, they apparently haven't. Little is actually truly known about these people because of a refusal to let anthropologists study them. Is it the best way to go for a situation like this? Well, perhaps in this case it is. While humans may think that they own and rule the world, they actually don't, not even close. But they think they do, and thus that gives them the right to try to do whatever they want, and throughout that they'll push forward with their goal. Number 10. The Asaro Mudmen. When it comes to the Asaro Mudmen, there are actually several versions of oral history regarding their creation, and there are as many versions of them as there are sources. One source says that they were once defeated by an enemy tribe, and that's when they were forced to flee into the Asaro River, where they met a man that gave them eyes to kill. Then later at dusk, they would try to escape in order to take out their enemies, and when the enemy saw them rise from the muddy banks of the river, they were covered in mud, and the enemy thought that they were a spirit. Most tribes in Papua New Guinea are afraid of spirits, so naturally they fled in fear, and the Asaro were able to escape. That's when they went into the village and saw what had happened, not knowing that the enemy was still there. And in fact, they were so terrified that they ran back to their village and created a special ceremony in order to ward off these spirits. The mudmen were unable to cover their faces because legend had said that the people thought that the mud from the river was actually poisonous. So instead of covering their faces with the alleged poison, they then made masks out of pebbles, and they heated from water and a waterfall. No matter which version that you believe, one thing is for certain, the masks are unique and quite funny looking at times, and it's a very entertaining thing to see. Number 9. Northern Cheyenne. As we return to Native Americans, we head to easily one of the most famous of the bunch, the Northern Cheyenne tribe. They were known for many years as an incredibly hard-working tribe, and what's more, they were known for having a deep respect for the land in which they lived. Many Native Americans do their best to protect their lands because they know that this is all they have in a certain amount of ways. However, despite the Northern Cheyenne being very peace-loving people and agricultural, it always seemed to be a point to fight within the U.S. For decades, the Northern Cheyenne would war against the United States Army, fighting in fierce battles in present-day Wyoming and Montana. This also included the infamous Sand Creek Massacre, where many of the tribe were lost in the fight. In 1876, the Northern Cheyenne joined forces with other tribes in the Battle of Little Bighorn, thus helping to defeat the U.S. forces that were led by General George Custer. One of the most important moments of U.S. history, as well as Native American history. The Cheyenne and many other tribes in this world deserve so much more than what anyone has given them. Number 8. The Apache. Easily one of the most well-known and respected Native American tribes out there, the Apache were fierce warriors that put a lot of people in their place with their abilities and skills. It was also the Apache who, beyond anyone else, would do their best to try and save their homeland from the oncoming swarm of Europeans turned colonists turned Americans. Legendary figures all came from the Apache tribe, which included Cochise, Mangus Coloradus, Geronimo, and Victorio. Another thing to note was that at one point in time, the Apache had a pretty large swath of land to call home, but fast forward to today and they're not even close to what they had before, and you can blame people for that. Despite having all of that land, they were very nomadic in nature, to the extent that it was said that their life was dedicated to being forged ahead by the animal that they were hunting. Number 7. Comanche. Behold another proud race of Native Americans where this time it's the Comanche that we're talking about. By their own accounts, they were the Lords of the Plains, which has a nice ring to it, I would say. But one of the things that separated them from other tribes, and even many in the United States at the time, was that they were truly masters of the horse-bound combat. They're said to be rivals to some of the greatest horseman fighters of all time, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was true. They too would be tied to the path of the buffalo, and they would use every part of it at times to ensure that they got the maximum amount from it and that they weren't wasting anything. Comanche horsemen set the pattern of nomadic equestrian life that became characteristic of the Plains tribes in the 18th and 19th centuries. Number 6. The Yali tribe. Now, you might want to have a disclaimer for this one, because the Yali are the wild and dangerous tribe of cannibals of the 21st century, which has more than 20,000 members. Now, I'm talking about a tribe of cannibals, and if you couldn't tell, they really enjoy that they're cannibals, because to them, eating a fallen enemy is giving them and themselves a boost in valor. If that worked in World of Warcraft, we'd all still be playing it, wouldn't we? Anyway, the tribe was so feared that the government had to figure out how to get them off the island, or that they could straight up screw with them in order to get them in the cave. So what did they do? They introduced Christianity and other key religions to the area, and as a result of that, the cannibal killing stopped by a large margin. They are still going, but they're not as wild as before. Number 5. Kiowa. The tribe known as the Kiowa have traveled far and wide to many different places, all in order to find a home. Originally from the northern plains and migrating to the southern plains, the Kiowa society follows bilateral descent. That is, both maternal and paternal lines are significant. The Kiowa historically had a nomadic hunter-gatherer society. They shared a similar cuisine with their neighboring plains tribes, such as the Comanche. The most important food source for the Kiowa and fellow plains nations was the American bison or buffalo. Before the introduction of horses, bison were hunted on foot and required the hunter to get as close as possible to the target before going in to shoot with arrows or use a long lance. Occasionally, they would wear the skins of wolves or coyotes in order to hide their approach toward the bison herds. It was very clever, and it's good that they found out about horses because it clearly helped them greatly. Number 4. Kazakh. The Kazakh were a people who were actually born from a mixture of Turkish tribes. When they arose in the 15th century, they made their mark, hence why they're on this list. Kazakh identify as medieval origin and have strongly shaped the foundation of the Kazakh Khanate between 1456 and 1465, when several tribes under the rule of the sultans departed from another tribe in hopes of forming a powerful tribe of their own. And they did just that, in their own way, of course. At the beginning of the 21st century, there were roughly 10 million Kazakhs in Kazakhstan and about 1,400,000 in China, showing that they are indeed a people who are still around today. A fun twist, though, is that the part of the reason they lasted so long was that they were basically nomads. They would wander around and live in special dome-shaped tents. Number 3. Chimbu Skeleton Tribe. The Chimbu skeleton tribe is one from New Guinea that still operates even to this day, but the reason that they're known as the skeleton tribe was that in the older times they would paint themselves to look like skeletons, all in order to make the enemy think that they were dead or undead, depending on how you look at it. Either way, it became an effective tactic and earned them a lot of fame and fear. Fast forward to today, and that's still going on. However, these days it's simply for celebratory purposes. In fact, over 60 Highland tribes meet for 6 days to share their cultures and rituals at the Mount Hagen Festival. Number 2. The Mohawks. The Mohawks were a fierce warrior culture that lived along the Mohawk River of the Mohawk Valley in upstate New York to southern Quebec and eastern Ontario, and they were considered by the Iroquois Confederacy as the keepers of the Eastern Door. They were so feared, in fact, that even other Native American tribes were actually scared about what they could potentially do or what would become of them if they crossed paths. But why were they so intimidating? Well, it's simple. They were incredibly fierce and brutal when they fought, and word spread of what they would do to their enemies, and that was enough cause to fear all of them. Number 1. Chukchi. Finally, we have a tribe that no one would want to mess with because they live in one of the coldest parts of the planet. This is the Chukchi, and they make their home in Siberia, one of the coldest places of the world, and this tribe has been living there for quite some time. And if you want to know how tough they are, the Russian army once tried to get rid of them in the 1700s, and 40 years later they realized that the cost of getting rid of them would be too high, so they simply gave up. As for how they survive in the freezing cold, they do all sorts of things that cold weather people do, which includes going after the animals that are there to eat and survive, which apparently includes hunting reindeer. Just, don't tell Santa Claus. That's all from the realm of tribes of the world and why many of them are quite scary. Did you know about all of these tribes when they were revealed to you in the video? And which ones would you personally not want to mess with? Are you part of a tribe yourself? Be sure to let me know all about it in the comments section down below. Check out the other cool things that are showing up on the screen, and I'll see you next time.